Do you know that feeling when a place stops being a destination and becomes part of who you are? Wild, windswept, desolate and beautiful. Mattole Beach. Car camping is what allows me to stay in places like this long enough to make art, but for a long time, sleeping in my car made that feel impossible. So I drove back to the Lost Coast with Plein, intending to spend 3 days painting there, all the while wondering whether I could stay. This is what happened, and the art I made there. The first thing I did when I arrived was to head down to the beach to do some drawing and to let Fly stretch her legs after the long car drive. Seeing that wild beach stretching out in front of me filled my heart with joy, and walking in the sheer force of that wind was absolutely exhilarating. But it was so windy, I didn't think I was going to be able to draw at all. I found a pile of driftwood to shelter behind and hunkered down for my first sketch of the trip.
The first drawing you do always feels a little overworked. It's like you have to get all of the, I'm here, what am I painting? What am I doing? What do I even know what I'm doing? It's like you have to get all of the kind of pent up stuff out of your system. The getting here, the getting organized, the all of that stuff. And then you can actually start to see what you're looking at and what's interesting you and the marks that you want to make.
The first thing I noticed when I returned to a place like Mattole is the scale of it. The ocean feels enormous. The sky feels enormous. Even the wind seems to have a physical presence. It moves along the beach, through the grasses and over the surface of everything. The longer I stay, the more the landscape begins to break into particular things. The different shapes of the driftwood that have washed up onto the shore, just weathered and beautiful, beautiful forms and shapes and colours. The exact colour of the water on one afternoon. The way the light catches on the wet sand carved by a creek. The dark shape of the hills beneath a layer of fog. You know, there's no cell phone reception out here, there's no Wi-Fi. You're just free from all of the noise of everyday life, and it's just such an amazing reset. That is when a place starts to move beyond being scenery. It becomes somewhere you are in relationship with. The more closely I look, the more I feel that attention is a form of care. The truth is, getting myself to places like this has not always been easy. Car camping is genuinely difficult for me. The confined space of a vehicle can send me into a spiral, and the thought of being unable to leave immediately makes everything feel much more intense. And I've failed at car camping because of it. I'll link that video down below. But here's the thing, getting out there to paint on plein air, being fully immersed in a landscape for days at a time, that's not a nice to have for me. That's a key part of my process. But that dream, that vision drove me to be curious about what didn't work and to figure out what might make car camping more manageable for me.
The combination of a full car and being much closer to the roof is what actually triggered the claustrophobia.
And figuring that out gave me the confidence to try again.
I'm at Mattole Beach. I've been here overnight. So yes, I did actually manage to succeed at car camping, which is amazing. I have conquered my claustrophobia. I have figured out how to make it work for me, and I'm really excited about that.
Mattole Beach sits at the northern end of the Lost Coast Trail, in a part of California that feels wonderfully far from the noise and bustle of everyday life.
It's just amazing to be here. It's so wild and remote. It's just the most magically beautiful place. We had an okay night. It was a bit up and down, but I did manage to sleep most of the night. I've just got myself set up with some large sheets of paper and some drawing materials, and we're going to go down to the beach to do some big paintings. Just see how we go. And yeah, it's a bit of an experiment, so I'm excited to see what I learn from it. I was really inspired by the restless energy of the ocean and decided to make that the focus of my first large drawing.
For me, plein air painting is not simply a way of making an image in front of a landscape. It's a way of allowing the place to enter the work. The wind becomes part of the mark making. The physical effort of standing or sitting outside becomes part of the rhythm. The salt air, the changing temperature, the sounds around me, all of these things affect how I see and how I work.
Need to wait for that to dry. One of the other challenges of plein air painting is sand. Sand gets everywhere. I really liked working at this large scale out here. Super excited to see where I take these two pieces next. Love the big sheets of paper so much. Just to be able to work at that scale out here, I think is really freeing. When you work in a sketchbook, you tend to be a little bit more timid with your gestures, so it's really nice to be out here and just have big pieces of paper and just be able to let loose on them. The weather is coming in a little bit, it's foggy and it feels a little dank and damp. So I have Flyby in her coat because she was a bit cold this morning when we got up, so just keeping us both rugged up and warm. After lunch I walked north up the beach and I was going to go a little further, but Fly started getting a bit tired, so we stopped here because I really was liking the shapes that were being cut into the sand by the water, and so I've sat down and I've done just a series of drawings.
The work changed as the conditions changed. I couldn't separate the drawing from the place I was making it. The wind, the dampness, the sand, and the effort of staying present all became part of the experience.
There is nothing like being outside and feeling the power and energy of the wild and of the natural world, and have that manifest in your work. It's
the most amazing thing, and you just feel in tune with the environment and the work, and it's kind of the ultimate flow state. All of my dirty paintbrush water is in here, and all I do is I just add it in. So that's not going into the environment, that's coming home with me. Now, if you enjoy these quiet journeys and the artworks that come from them, I'd love you to subscribe and to come along for the next one. There are always more landscapes to explore and more work finding its way into the world. These pieces are not literal records of Mattole Beach. They're not maps, and they're not intended to reproduce every detail of the coastline. They are more like records of what happened to my attention while I was there. The grey of a particular morning, the green of the hills, the brown of the sand, the weight of the wind pressing against the paper, the feeling of standing beside the ocean and realising that for a little while, I was not trying to get anywhere else. Oh, I am so thankful for these few days. It's been really rewarding on a number of levels. I've done some great drawing, just having the big sheets of paper made such a difference. When I look at these works now, I don't see a generic coastline. I see this coastline. I see the physical effort of getting there and the quiet that followed. I see a place that asked me to slow down enough to notice it properly. I think about that often when I'm making work about a landscape. We can't always be in the places that restore us. We can't always take long journeys and spend the night or walk long distances. But we can remember, we can keep looking, we can bring something into our homes that reminds us of the wildness we value. Coming to places like this, it just reminds you of how amazing and beautiful and wonderful this planet is and how we should cherish it. Cherish it and care for it, because it is the only one we have. For me, that is what these drawings and paintings are trying to do. They are not a substitute for being there. They couldn't be. But they can hold a feeling. They can carry the memory of a place forward. And they can remind us that the landscapes that we love are worth noticing, protecting, and returning to when we can. Good morning. It's our last morning. I just came down to the beach to have my cup of tea, and we're going to get packed up and get going. Every trip I take, I feel like it's such a learning journey. I learn more about myself, I learn more about my practice, I deepen my practice, and I learn more about car camping, and I get better at that. I came to Mattole Beach because I wanted to return to a place that had already become important to me. I wanted to see if I could still make room for this kind of experience in my life. The answer was not everything suddenly becoming easy. It didn't. I still had to work with my fears and my limitations. But I learned that the answer did not have to be giving up. It could be curiosity, it could be experimentation. It's just very restorative and definitely what I needed. Sometimes adventure is simply choosing to return. Sometimes it's staying long enough for the light to change. Sometimes it's giving yourself permission to want something deeply and then finding a gentler way. Grateful for Fly's company. She's been amazing. She's just such a pleasure to be with. Perhaps the wild does not always ask us to leave everything behind. It is, after all, around us always. Sometimes it asks us simply to make room for one small return, one walk, 1 hour, one place where we can pay attention again. And perhaps the art we live with can help us carry that attention home. So that's all for this time. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate the support. And remember, the wild is with you always.